What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter is at ImmacSports.
I'm also at Max Sports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 281. We're after a little break, but so much has happened in the time. We have plenty to talk about, Kyle. Seattle's defense smothers the Patriots in the Super Bowl. We got spring training starting pretty soon. A couple other things we'll get to here. The NBA having a lot of ups and a lot of downs during their All-Star weekend and trade deadline. It's just great to be back. And if you are following Kyle on Twitter, you definitely know what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one today, going over the MLB Offseason Grades, as the offseason is pretty much officially over now with every team back for spring training. Spring training games start on Friday. So we're going to go over off-season grades for all 30 teams and then some winners and losers of the NBA deadline. Last week, didn't have an episode just because there wasn't going to be enough to talk about for an hour. We weren't going to talk NBA trade deadline and the Wizards getting Anthony Davis, who's hurt, for an hour. So we held off from that. Didn't want to waste anybody's time, but definitely going to be a fun one today. And we'll get started right away with your opener.
All right. Well, Kyle, I'm a big fan of sports. Obviously, that's why we're here right now. But I'm also a big fan of history. So I always enjoy watching the Olympics. And I've been able to watch most of what I want to see so far, these Winter Olympics in Italy, except for snowboarding being at 2 a.m. That part has sucked. But Kyle, ever since the Four Nations about a year ago in hockey, I've had a really good time getting back into hockey. And this tournament has been really fun to watch too. USA's been getting the job done, learning about new guys and seeing the Hughes brothers, their craftiness, the Kachuk brothers fighting people. We got Austin Matthews. We can root for him now. We don't have to, turn on NHL Network and watch Toronto to root for Austin Matthews, the American player. And looking like we're going to play Sweden tomorrow. That'll be a good game, setting up a potential top four in ice hockey men's, Canada versus Finland and USA versus Slovakia. Either way, man, they're probably not going to be Canada, but I'm excited to. Unfortunately, that gold medal game's at 5 a.m, but we'll eventually see it here in the States. I've had a really good time getting back into hockey, so that's my opener. There's another thing that happened. I'll say before we get started, Cal State Fullerton played 36 innings in 2 days, Kyle. An absolute crazy start to your opener.
Yeah, a couple things for my opener. Two-parter. Best thing I saw with my own two eyes was world number one in golf, Scotty Scheffler from about 5 yards away, less than that, at the Waste Management Open in Phoenix. Very cool first tournament that I've been to for golf since 2019 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. And seeing Scotty Scheffler that close is really cool, especially with the atmosphere over there in Phoenix is pretty unique when it comes to golf. But the second part, the best thing I watched through a TV screen with my own two eyes is baseball being back. Santa Barbara, LSU, all these teams playing. This past week, really cool. Santa Barbara lost 2 out of 3 to Southern Miss, who is a ranked opponent, but they did win one game, headlined by potentially number one pitcher off the board, Jackson Flora. Goes 6 shutout innings against Southern Miss, really dominates. Fastball up to 100, 101, which is really cool to see. And a lot of people talking on Twitter of him being potentially the guy right after Rock. From UCLA to go number 2 in the draft, which will be really, really cool to see. Spring training being back as well, too. This is a time where you can't really be wrong on your predictions. So I enjoy that as well, too. Kind of just get to talk about it just for fun and speculate. And if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, there's so many different reasons why you can be wrong. So it's really easy to be okay with being wrong. But it's a good time. It's always good when this stuff is back. It's still a little bit slow right now. Once spring training games heat up, and next thing you know, the World Baseball Classic will be here coinciding with NFL free agency, which will be fun. And then we get into the MLB season when we're like March 25th, 26th. But the key point, baseball's back and it's here to stay until November. Which leads me into our MLB offseason grades, doing it AL East, Central West, and then the same thing in the NL. Starting off with a team who had a really big offseason, pretty fittingly, the Baltimore Orioles. Why don't you go ahead and get us started here?
All right. So with Baltimore, I'm going B plus. Here's the thing. Whether you like Grayson Rodriguez or not, or like the trade or not, I have got to give the O's some credit here for having the balls to go all in right now. Taylor Ward is an all-star. So is Pete Alonso, maybe even greater feat than that, potentially. Shane Baz is finally healthy. Chris Bassett's one of the toughest dudes in MLB. I really like their offseason a lot because there's no way these other wild card hopeful teams, Detroit, Seattle, even San Francisco on the other side, would admit to their mistakes and flip their identity like this, like Baltimore has done. I really like it.
Yeah, Baltimore, I think, had a great offseason. They didn't really lose anybody big. Sagano, Gary Sanchez, Cionel Perez, nothing too crazy. But they added a ton of pieces. Taylor Ward, Pete Alonso, and Blaze Alexander to the lineup. Blaze Alexander will likely start for Westberg or Holiday. If one of, I know Holiday is probably more likely to miss opening day, but maybe Westberg is as well too. So when the Blaze Alexander trade happened, you're kind of like, what? Why did they do that for? As we see now, it makes a whole lot more sense. Pitchers that they added a bunch of different guys: Bassett, Boz, Helsley, and Kittredge. We know, Baltimore was one of the more frustrating teams in the MLB last year because they could hit, but we knew that their pitching was going to be a problem because they just did not address it in the offseason. This time they did. Grayson Rodriguez versus Taylor Ward trade specifically, I think they won that trade as well too. I think their goal this year is to just out hit everybody in that division. And Grayson Rodriguez, while his ceiling's higher than Taylor Ward, his floor is definitely not higher than Taylor Ward. And I think that's something that we're probably looking at with Grayson Rodriguez coming off an injury. Overall, really good offseason. The lineup should be elite. So I'm going to go ahead and give it an A, one of my favorite off seasons in the MLB. Moving up north to Toronto, the Blue Jays, the reigning AL champs.
I'm going A for Toronto. Dylan Cease, Akamoto, Tyler Rogers. They're locked and loaded. They're ready to run it back in the American League. This is one of the teams I felt like I didn't have to write a whole bunch down. We'll go way deeper into the other teams. Toronto is ready to repeat the American League.
Yeah, lineup, they lose Bo Bichette, but they add Kazuma Akamoto, which I think is actually a more of a fair trade-off than what most people expect. They trade Loperfido for Jesus Sanchez, which is kind of a scratch deal as well, too. Cease and Ponce, who they added to the rotation, with Tyler Rogers, a submariner, added to the pen. The rotation was never an issue for them, but I like that they have, 7 guys that they can really go out there and start with and be okay, because that's how the MLB season goes. You need to have the depth. They have it now in the AL East, which we know is going to be a tough division. The lineup isn't anything crazy, I don't think. Sanchez, Jimenez, Clement at the bottom. Ernie did have a great playoffs, but nobody's saying that he's going to be a guy who's 800 OPS in for you. But they will play good defense. They'll play very clean within the baselines for sure. So I'll give it a B plus. I think it was a good offseason. Dylan Cease, I don't think is going to be like this top tier pitcher. But if he's a 2 for them or a 3, they'll be just all right. So Toronto B plus, just slightly lower than Baltimore. Next up, the big spenders of the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Tampa's always a tough one to grade. I gave them a C minus. They traded at least 10 different players this offseason, and I don't think that's counting minor league players either. And I don't think they're going to stop until everybody with some trade value is out of there. And I feel like up until this point, we got to trust Tampa Bay that they know what they're doing here. So they end up somewhere in the middle in the grading system. But they didn't get a whole lot of MLB talent. Jacob Melton's interesting. Lux, we'll see what he has in the tank left there, and Ben Williamson. Some intrigue with these guys, but are they going to be able to replace not Lau? They're both low, right? Josh and Brandon.
One of them's either or. I think it's Brandon Lowe. I don't know. I need to be in May for you to ask me that question again.
Exactly.
But they lose both of them. Thing. Yeah.
But can they replace both of them plus the pitching staff? Probably not in just one off season. So C minus.
Yeah, it's weird. Interesting. Always going to be weird for Tampa Bay because they are quite a bit of a lower spender than any other team in this division. They lose Adrian Hauser, Pete Fairbanks, Christopher Morel. They trade both to Lows. They get back Gavin Lux, who I don't love, Cedric Mullins in a free agency deal, which is okay, I guess. Jake Fraley, they add as well too. Ben Williamson, Justin Henry, Malloy as some options for various positions around the field. Starting rotation, they add Nick Martinez, Steven Matz, a couple of solid vets, and then a couple of smaller bullpen adds as well too. I'm not too worried about the bullpen. I know losing Fairbanks sucks, but you can trust Tampa Bay to find a guy that nobody's ever heard of that's just going to dominate. The rotation, I think, is pretty much filled up with guys that you can trust to pitch 150 plus innings, which I like. I just don't like what they did with the lineup. I think losing both allows makes your lineup significantly thinner. And I really only trust Yandy, Aranda, and Caminero in that lineup right now. And that's tough. That's very tough in this division. So I give it a D plus. I wish they did a little bit more for the bats. But I like what they did in the pitching side. On to Boston, who had a very busy offseason as well.
They were very busy, but I didn't end up going too high on their grade. C plus. We've watched a ton of Sonny Gray. He's a great pitcher, of course. Ranger Suarez, I think, is a good fit. Contreras, very big hole at first base for them, while Casas has been missing time. But here's the thing. They couldn't replace Alex Bregman, and they never got that big bat they were in on, like Alonso. So I know it's going to be a pretty young team. Their eyes are set on a much larger window. But unless this makeshift rotation turns into a Seattle-ish situation, there's no way they're competing for a World Series. So I think there's a trade somewhere here that Boston isn't quite ready to make. Duran or maybe Abreu. That's why it's a C plus. This isn't the final roster, so I couldn't give them any higher.
Yeah, interesting offseason. They lose Bregman, trade the password. They add Wilson Contreras from St. Louis, add Caleb Durbin from Milwaukee to replace Bregman at third base or second base, depending on if Mayer plays third. They add IKF as a IKF type guy. The rotation's completely overhauled. Ranger Suarez, Sonny Gray, Johan Oviedo, three pitchers I actually really like. I think they did good there. The rotation or the bullpen doesn't see much difference. And I wish they added, an arm or two, especially in such a very stacked reliever class. I think with their division, pitching in the seventh, eighth inning is going to be so big. And I know they have Aroldis Chapman and Garrett Whitlock, who are great, but getting to that inning, might be a little bit tough sometimes, especially if you're relying on Oviedo, who's coming off an injury. I know I just said I really like him, but that's if he's completely healthy. Losing Bregman sucks. How they handled the Devers stuff, I know it wasn't the offseason, but even just getting rid of Kyle Harrison, who they got in that trade, and getting rid of James Tibbs in the trade deadline prior was pretty weird. So I'll take them down 2 notches, but I think overall they had a really good offseason. They didn't panic in a lot of ways. So I'll go A minus. I think they did good overall. Last team in the AL East, the New York Yankees.
I actually had a slightly higher grade with the Yankees for this offseason. I gave them a B. The Yankees are going to have to pick up another bullpen guy or 6, but they were able to bring back a lot of guys too, like Bellinger and Grisham, at least on a qualifying offer combined. We didn't think was possible to get both of them. Goldschmidt, many more vets are coming in. They didn't get Dylan Cease, but you know what? They did get Ryan Weathers from Miami. And at the end of the day, they're going to need Judge, Jazz, and Garrett Cole anyway. So I didn't view this as a year where they needed to spend as much as the Mets. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, they lose a couple of bullpen arms, Devin Williams and Luke Weaver. They didn't really change anything position player wise, which I think is okay. I know they're kind of locked down money wise with like Ryan McMahon at third base, which is an interesting move just from going back to last year's deadline. But the lineup's good, so I don't think I can fault that too much. The Weathers add to the rotation is good. I think he'll be good in the pinstripes as well too. And I think what they usually do in their pitching labs is going to help him. Obviously, still a ton of injuries for your pitchers. Garrett Cole, Rodon, Clark Schmidt still finding the way back from injury. Louis Eel was not that good at the end of last year. Weathers, I like him, but he's also coming off of injury as well too. So I really wish they added some of those, 26th, 27th type man pitchers more throughout their rotation in minor leagues, just because you're probably going to have to rely on those guys a little bit, and the game or two in the division is really going to make a difference. The bullpen lost a couple of guys, like I said, but it's not going to hurt them too much because I trust the Yankees to find guys in the pen as they have in the past 5-10 years consistently. I just think they didn't make a ton of moves when the rest of the division really did. So they fault my grade there. I'll give them a C minus because I like the Weathers deal. And they didn't do anything stupid, but they didn't do anything good either in my eyes. Next up, the AL Central, starting with the Cleveland Guardians.
I got a D grade for Cleveland. Unfortunately for the Guardians, they had to say goodbye to some pitching that they expected to be there for a long time, from Class A with his off the field trouble to Tristan McKenzie's elbow falling off. So the only thing they could really do was extend J Ram, which they did it. So I didn't give them an F.
Yeah, they lost a couple of fringe big leaguers on their team. Jacob Junis, Lane Thomas, Sam Henches, John Means, who's out for like a couple more years now at this point. Um, but the lineup was really bad, and they did not add to the lineup at all. I think that's going to be a problem for them. They did not add to the rotation either, which is not a very deep group. They had a couple small adds to the bullpen. And as the rule goes, in my eyes, if you don't add in the offseason, you don't stay the same, you get worse. And while the rotation, could, have some sleeper options, this is another probably fifth or sixth straight year that they're relying on the pen to throw so many innings. And at some point, it's going to fall apart. I'm not saying that Cade Smith or Hunter Gaddis is going to have a bad year, but they're probably going to be due for injury here at some point of pitching how many times that they do, 80, 90 times a year is a lot. So I think they had a really bad offseason, one of the worst in the AL, if not the worst. So I'll go D minus for Cleveland. Only thing bumping them up is that, J Ryan is now going to be there till he retires. Kansas City.
Kansas City, I'm going to give a B plus. I like the Isaac Collins trade for these guys, well above average bat that still fits their identity. Lane Thomas looking for a bounce back joins this group too. Michael Garcia is another guy in this division who gets a big extension. And they get some much needed bullpen help. They trade for Strom and Nick Mears from Milwaukee. So definitely trending upwards. This is a team who understood the assignment. They needed to get a little deeper if they want to win the division.
Yeah, a couple small losses, more medium size. Yaz, Lorenzen, and Hunter Harvey. Lineup adds Isaac Collins and Lane Thomas, like you mentioned. Rotation doesn't add anything, but they didn't really need anything. And then the bullpen kind of sees a bit of a makeover with Strom, Nick Mears, and Alex Lange, who used to be pretty good 3-4 years ago as well too. They didn't make a huge move, but I was okay with it. There was no move here that I'm like, wow, that's going to hurt them. That's a bad move. I think every move that they made was a net positive. So I'll give them a B here. It's nothing crazy. I like that they're giving the young guys, Carter Jensen and Jack Caglione, some run time here as well too. Instead of signing like an Adam Frazier to take one of the roles or something like that. So a B for Kansas City. The Detroit Tigers.
I'm giving Detroit a solid B for their offseason. Framber's one of the best starters in the American League, even if he is a prick. So good for them. They needed some vets on the pitching staff, so I'm okay with Verlander coming back. Kenley Jansen, you would imagine, would be a pretty good fit in this division, too. They can't afford Bo Bichette, but it's okay. Gleyber Torres is coming back. And the big thing is the Skubal situation. A lot of people are upset with the arbitration case, but my question for those people is, what do you expect to happen? He's not getting a big deal from Detroit, and no, he's not getting traded if Detroit's in first place. So this is how it's going to play out. They're going to go on one more run.
They didn't lose anybody big. The lineup's the same. Probably could have used a bat, but I understand if they want to give guys like McGonigal a clear shot to play once we get to April or May. The rotation has some big adds in Framber Valdez and bringing back JV. Kenley add to the pen. Definitely feels like a team that kind of understands. I don't know if their window's closing, but like hey, this is probably going to be our last chance to win the World Series for 3 to 4 years until McGonigal and all these other guys get older. So adding Jansen and Verlander for their last rides of being productive players is kind of what makes me say that. And also Tariq Skubal, 99% of the time going to be gone after this year. I think it's a good offseason. They didn't do anything where I'm like, wow, that's an overpay or that's very stupid. I know it's a lot of money for Framber, but it's reasonable in my eyes. So I'll give it a B plus. I think they did good for not trading Skubal. Minnesota.
This is going to be an F for me. I just don't see a scenario where they're competitive at all because they probably aren't trying to be either. It looks like they're just trying to fill the open spots with veteran minimums. Josh Bell, Gio Urshela, these guys don't move the needle. Pablo Lopez, now we find out today, possible TJ surgery. And I would expect Minnesota to keep selling off major league talent too. So this is not going to be a pretty season for these guys.
No real big losses. I'll say that. Veteran ads: Josh Bell, Victor Caratini. I like the Bell ad. Caratini doesn't really do much for me. No adds to the rotation. Now we know as well too, as of today, that Pablo Lopez is probably going to be out for the season. Bullpen re-adds Taylor Rogers, who was there for a long time at the beginning of his career. And then also some lefties in Anthony Banda and Andrew Chafin. So really all three lefties. Every single move that I saw here was like a trade you at the deadline type situation to me, which is okay. I think they didn't panic here. They understand, hey, this is probably going to be a start of a rebuild in a division that seems very easy to rebuild in pretty consistently, which means I'm not going to give you a terrible grade because I think they signaled exactly what they want to do with this offseason. They're going to give some young guys some runway, which I like as well too, and really try to make a rebuild in Minnesota. So I'll give it a C. Not good, not bad, but they didn't overdo anything. The Chicago White Sox.
I think the reason I was so hard on Minnesota is the way that the White Sox have started, at least, to turn things around. I'm as excited as one possibly can be for the new look White Sox, which is a B plus for me. Munetaka Murakami, man, he might strike out a bunch, but so does Mike Trout. So who cares? He just won the Triple Crown in Japan. At the end of the day, guys like Acuna and Kelenic and Anthony Kay, they're probably not going to be stars, but you know what? They clear out the books. They open up spots for guys like Braden Montgomery to come in right away, Hagen Smith to throw innings right away, and maybe some more trades with this team too, of course.
No real big losses. They did lose Mike Tauchman as of today, signed a minor league deal with the Mets. They added Munetaka Murakami, which is a big one. Austin Hayes, Luis Angel Acuna, Everson Pereira. Obviously, they did trade Louis Bob in the Acuna deal as well too. They add Anthony Kay and Eric Fetty in the rotation, which is something. The bullpen, I like what they did there. A closer in Sir Anthony Dominguez. Sean Newcomb, who we really liked as an A last year, Jordan Hicks, who has the ability to throw 100+ innings from a rotation or bullpen role, however they want to use them. I think a lot of their moves I like, and I think there's going to be, especially in that division, a couple series that they take from divisional teams that could keep a team out of the playoffs. The thing that's going to hurt them, though, is that I don't think they did any moves to get big league starters in the rotation. I know Fetty and Kay are going to take innings, but I would be shocked if those guys post anything better than like a 4.5 ERA. And until they address that, and I know they have Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz coming in the next couple of years as well too, but I can't give them a high grade. So I'll go C plus is what my final grade is. I had C, I've had B minus, but C plus is what I'll settle on. I like the general gist of what they did, but the starting rotation is just not big league ready, and that's a problem. On to the AL West and the Angels.
All right. Well, with the Angels, I'm going C plus. I don't think they had a bad offseason either. They're right in the middle, like some other teams we've talked about. Grayson Rodriguez is going to get a chance to prove his health. Josh Lau is solid, but the list of signings here for LA, it's just a bunch of rentals, just like Minnesota. So maybe their plan is to flip Pomeranz and Moncada and Alek Manoah and many, many more. But I don't think I could go any higher than this for a team that likes to spend. They're looking like another 70-win season, even if their lineup is better.
Their losses include Kenley, Chafin, Rengifo, Brock Burke in the Josh Lau trade. They add Josh Lau. They add Vaughn Grissom, who could get an opportunity to play. They add Adam Frazier as of a couple days ago, who could be, your utility guy everywhere. The rotation adds consist of Grayson Rodriguez and Alek Manoah, which we'll get into in a second. Their bullpen completely overhauled. Pomeranz, Yates, Romano, Brent Suter. I like that part. I'll say that. I really like what they did to the bullpen. I think it'll work out this year. I know it's a lot of 37, 38-year-olds out there, but that usually works for a year that you can go ahead and trade those guys in the long run. The rotation scares the shit out of me. Manoah on Fangraphs is slated to be the number 5 starter. I know they have guys like George Klassen in the minors. That is Tyler Bremner, who's probably going to be ready to go eventually. But I don't like how they're relying on Manoah right now, or relying on a rookie who's never pitched in the big leagues to get them outs. They should add added a couple more minor league guys, whether it's Walker Buehler, who just went to San Diego a couple of days ago, or whatever San Diego's been doing. LA should have signed a couple of those dudes. I just don't like how they went about the rotation. The lineup isn't that negative for me. Losing Taylor Ward is going to hurt a lot with how much he really made the lineup be deep last year. Losing his 30 homers, 100 RBIs is going to be really bad. Bullpen going back to it as well. Robert Stevenson probably going to be healthy again, who they signed a few years ago. Ben Joyce, maybe he comes back as well too. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's terrible because I really like what they did to the bullpen. But the rotation in the lineup is going to bring it down to about a C for me. Next up, the A's.
Yeah, this is probably the most notes for both of us today. So let's get right into it. For the A's, I'm going with a B. We've talked a ton about Jeff McNeil already, so I'll cut straight to the pitching staff. Savalier, Mark Leiter, Scott Barlow, they're not flashy, but they were absolutely necessary to survive a 162-game season. And that's the thing, man. The pitching depth is going to be the thing that holds this team back. But I don't think it's the end of the world either. I think Morales and Gage Jump, not to mention all the other projects in AAA that are going to get their shot this year, they're going to have a chance to prove themselves over the next 2 seasons. Jacob Wilson, Tyler Soderstrom, they get their extensions this offseason. So overall, everyone's going to be really optimistic about this core. But the reality is we're not that Joe Ryan trade away from the World Series, so I'm not going to kill them if they go 500. I think it's okay to play it safe one more year. So I gave him a solid B for bringing in some depth pieces.
Yeah, I think it was a good offseason. Only real loss was Sean Newcomb. I guess J.J. Bleday as well too, but he didn't really have a role on this roster anymore.
Yeah.
Lineup bat is Jeff McNeil, which adds another tough at-bat to already one of the best lineups in baseball. The only rotational ad is Aaron Savalier, but there's a ton of minor league guys who are going to get options here or get opportunities here. In the bullpen, Mark Leiter and Scott Barlow, maybe you could have wanted to see a Sir Anthony Dominguez or a guy that has the ability to close games. But when you look at the A's bullpen and you look at some of the underlying stuff, there's really, 3 or 4 guys that could potentially take a closer role, whether it's Sterner or Elvis Alvarado, who's had some really fun stuff. Jack Perkins has been good as well too. I think there's a ton of different options of guys to close games, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's not a flashy offseason for sure. There is no, $100 million free agency deal, but I don't know if we really truly expected that. We just wanted to be hopefully optimistic. They didn't make a trade that sends away some young talent to bring in a starting pitcher who's got 1 or 2 years of control, and you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot there because you want to compete sooner rather than later. I like the idea of being patient, which they've done. They did a great job to lock up their own and Jacob Wilson and Tyler Soderstrom. They did not waste any money, and that's what I think is a good thing with this team when money becomes very important to have in 3 or 4 years when you're in Vegas and not having – not Nick Castellanos, but a Nick Castellanos type of deal where you're like, fuck, why is this guy playing right field for us every single day? We don't have anybody like that, which is good. I'll give the A's a B for that. Moving on, the Seattle Mariners, who had a very busy offseason.
Yeah, I'm giving Seattle an A, man. We were both a little worried about the future of this squad, but Seattle's really going all in now. Josh Naylor comes back. Brendan Donovan comes in. And they're finally trading some of the prospects that they don't really need for this window because once you get a taste of the postseason, it's exactly like they're doing it right now. You can afford to trade some of these guys. And they're going to make it really hard for these other AL West teams to have a breakout before 2027. So that's why I gave them an A.
Yeah, good offseason for Seattle. They lose Suarez and Polanco in free agency. They trade Harry Ford. In return, they add Brendan Donovan in a trade. They add Rob Refsnyder, Andrew Kisner as some depth options. No adds to the rotation, which you're okay with. They had Jose Ferrar, who's really good in my eyes. Set up him and Gabe Spire as one of the toughest lefty combos in the bullpen out of any team in the big leagues for sure. For a team that did not have a ton of holes, I think they did a really good job. And they patched up the few possible holes that they could have. Their lineup got, I wouldn't say deeper, but Brendan Donovan and Cole Young. Cole Young's not really an addition, but he's going to be playing most likely every day now at this point. I think it's overall a good offseason. I'm not going to give him like an A plus, but I will give him a B plus because I do think they had one of the best, if not the best, offseason in the division. Next up, the Houston Astros.
I'm going to give Houston a solid B too, just like the A's. Tetsuya Amai, I think I'm saying that right, has me paying attention despite my hate towards this team. One of the top arms from Japan comes in to replace Framber Valdez. But when it comes to the lineup, these guys are definitely lacking too when it's compared to the other AL West teams. Luperfido that you mentioned is coming back in. Nick Allen, extra infielder. It looks great on paper, but it's like what we said about the A's pitching staff. They just needed these guys to fill out the lineup. I don't know if I trust anyone outside the top three on this squad either, unless they get some serious breakouts.
Yeah, they lose Framber Valdez and Mauricio Dubon, who they traded. They re-add Loperfido, and their big offseason bat that they add is Nick Allen.
Yeah.
Rotation did get some work. Tetsuya, Mike Burrows, who I like, and Ryan Weiss, who they signed back over from the KBO. They added Nate Pearson in the pen very early. I think it was like still during the postseason that they added this guy. They're dealing with a ton of injuries. Hayden Wesneski, Brandon Walter, Ronio Blanco, Lance McCullers, who's slated as healthy right now, but we know there's always something with him. Christian Javier is coming off a big injury. And I just see this rotation, and I like Amai. Obviously, Hunter Brown's an ace, but yeah. It's tough to pick who's going to stand out. And when their lineup is as bad as it was last year, and you're dealing with Carlos Correa, who's had his injury history, Jose Altuve, who's now going to be 36 years old, Yohan Alvarez, who hasn't been consistently healthy in 4 years, Christian Walker, who just had a really bad first year in Houston. You thought they were going to do something. I had them signing Cody Bellinger. Obviously, that does not go that way. This lineup scares me. Outside of that, I think they'll be fine. But I don't think they're, on par with Seattle anymore. And I did not think I'd be saying that about this Houston team. They don't really have the reinforcements coming up from internally in the minors to really help me say that they will get back into this without having to do something externally. And they just didn't do that this offseason. So I'm going to go D+. I do not like this. I do not like it at all. And losing Framber sucks as well, too. The Texas Rangers, last team in the AL.
I like what Texas did a lot. I gave them a B+. So second grade, I guess kind of graded on a curve in the West because we know it's going to be so tough here. So Texas gets the B+ over the A's and Houston because they definitely got better this offseason. Mackenzie Gore helped strengthen that rotation a ton, especially if the veterans stay healthy. And the truth is, as long as they don't get an absolute zero in the lineup from guys like Berger and Evan Carter and Jock and Brandon Nimmo, they're going to be way better than last season.
A lot of names lost. I'll say that first. They lose Semien, Merrill Kelly, Tyler Mahle, Patrick Corbin, Phil Maton, Hobie Milner, Adolis Garcia, Jacob Webb, and Jonah Heim. They add Brandon Nimmo in the Semien trade. They add Danny Jansen to replace the catcher role. Him and Higashioka should actually be a pretty good platoon. Or not platoon because they're both righties, but you get what I'm saying there. They add Mackenzie Gore to the rotation, who I'm not as big as a fan as some other people are. He had a really bad second half last year, and I think there's probably an injury coming at some point now, based off of how he pitched in the second half of the season. They add Jacob Junis, Alexis Diaz, Tyler Alexander to the pen, which looks like a rehaul. but it is a shitty rehaul. I think losing Jacob Webb, Homie Milner, and Phil Maton is one of the worst possible things that happened in a bullpen this offseason. I think the lineup is still relying on too many guys that had terrible seasons last year, and Jock Peterson, Jake Berger, and Evan Carter, Josh Young, who was also subpar as well too. The rotation, top heavy in my eyes. Jacob Latz and Jack Leiter are two guys that I don't know if I fully trust to take the ball pretty consistently for me yet. I understand you got to give Jack Leiter some runway, but Jacob Latz definitely could have been a guy that should not be starting for them, especially with Molly, Kelly, and Corbin leaving. I do not like this offseason. I really do not like it. There just was not enough sure moves from this team in my eyes. They made it okay. Walcott, now their biggest prospect, is out for the season. Gavin Feen's gone as well too. He was obviously like 6 years away because he's 18, but I don't like it. I really don't. I think it's one of the worst in the AL, so I'll give it a D. Maybe it's just my interpretation of their bullpen. It was a really good bullpen last year, and I think the three guys that they lost is going to hurt them for sure.
I guess compared to the A's, I didn't think too much about it, but that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, I was doing some research on some arms in the bullpen and finding guys that I really like for this next year. And Jacob Webb and Phil Maton were two guys that I was like, oh, these guys could close for a team. And they actually went to the same team. Same thing with Hobie Milner, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Done with the AL. Moving on to the NL. Starting off with the Atlanta Braves.
All right, so I'm going to give Atlanta a B. They also go with a depth strategy here, which I think is smart considering these guys just can't stay on the field. And most impressively to me, they bring in 6 new bullpen guys. Robert Suarez is in that group. Starter Martin Perez will end up throwing some innings for them too with all the injuries. Maybe in Schwellenbach's spot right away. So Atlanta's a solid B.
Their losses consist of Marcell Ozuna and Nick Allen, so nothing too crazy there. They add Mike Yastrzemski to the lineup. They add Mauricio Dubon as a guy who's probably going to play shortstop for them with Hassan Kim out. They add Jonah Heim, Jorge Mateo, and Brett Wisely as possible options in the bench as well too. No big rotation ads. Which is okay. I think Bryce Elder's an okay 5. I think I'd be fine with that, and that's where they have him slated right now. Losing Schwellenbach sucks for a bit. AJ Smith-Sharver, probably not back this year either, but I think they'll find guys to fill out that rotation as the season goes on. The bullpen, I think, got better. Robert Suarez as your setup man. Heck yeah. Like, that works. Ian Hamilton, fuck you for doing what you did to Jacob Wilson, but regardless – their pen works. The rotation, I don't know why I said rotation. The lineup, I don't think needed some crazy ad. They supplementally did good with Yaz and Dubon. It's not an A off season, but it's not a C or a D either. I'll give it a B minus. Miami.
All right, Miami. I liked it, man. I gave them an A minus. 5 big trades this offseason. They get rid of Edward Cabrera and Ryan Weathers, most notably, and I'm okay with it because they just have so much pitching in this organization. Owen Cassie, one time was a big-time prospect for the Cubs. Didn't really work out there, but Miami has experience developing a very similar prospect. His name, Kyle Stowers. Pete Fairbanks, also coming back to Florida, should be a sick fit for him over there in Miami.
Yeah, they lost no one. Free agent wise, they traded Edward Cabrera and Ryan Weathers. But it's funny on Fangraphs, it has like their free agency tracker, and there's literally no names here. And that's the only team in the big leagues that's like that. Lineup addition is Owen Casey, and they give him, or Casey, and they give him runway, it looks like, to win the right field job and play every single day. They also signed Christopher Morel, who probably not going to be a super big impact guy, but might have a couple big homers. The rotation, they add Chris Paddock, which I don't love. And the pen, they add Pete Fairbanks and John King. Fairbanks will close, considering Ronnie Henriquez is getting elbow surgery as of late December. he was really good as their closer last year. So him being out sucks, but I think Pete Fairbanks is a good addition to be okay with that. I'm slightly concerned about the rotation because Chris Paddock is not good. Max Meyer and Braxton Garrett, who they have in the rotation right now, I like when they're healthy, but these are two guys that are coming off big time injuries in recent years. Yuri Perez is their number two, who I love, but again, another guy who's coming off of injury. I don't know if he's going to be able to throw 150 innings. And Sandy Alcantara, I really don't like for this year. I think he's more closer to what we saw last year than what people's actual beliefs of him are at this point in his career. I'll give it a C minus because I didn't expect Miami to go out and sign like a Framber Valdez or get a Kyle Tucker or something like that. And I think they made a ton of good trades. But it wasn't. I wish they got like a Savalier or a Nick Martinez or somebody that they knew could throw 150 innings out of the rotation. And they don't have that right now in my eyes.
Yeah,
so
they're going to need a little Robbie Snelling for this to work for sure.
Yeah, and Thomas White and all the other guys who they have in the minors, which they do. So we'll see how that works. But C minus right now for me. The New York Mets.
I've seen some mixed reviews for the Metropolitans this offseason, but I'm going to go with an A. It clearly did not work last year. It was an embarrassing end to the season. So yeah, the roster's going to look different, and I think that's for the better. The fans are going to miss Alonso. They're going to really miss Edwin Diaz, but this is a deeper roster now. Bo Bichette, Marcus Semien, Louis Bob, Jorge Polanco, endless opportunities in the lineup. For the pitching staff, Freddie Peralta is a legitimate ace coming in. Devin Williams, Tobias Myers, who we both like. Luke Weaver, Kimbrel coming in. Many more quad A options too, just in case all their pitchers get hurt again. They're coming prepared this time around, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, probably the team that has the biggest turnover from last year. As far as roster spots, they lose Alonso, Diaz, Mullins, Rogers, and Greg Soto via free agency. They trade Nimmo and Acuna in a trade, as well as Brandon Sproats. And then that doesn't even include the prospects as well, too. But they add Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, Marcus Semien, and Louis Bob to the lineup. They add Peralta to the rotation with Tobias Myers as an option to start games as well, too. The bullpen adds Devin Williams and Luke Weaver from the Yankees, Luis Garcia, who's been good for a bunch of teams, and Brian Hudson, who was good for like half a year in Milwaukee a couple years ago, but I trust the Mets to do something good with him based off of what they've done with the bullpen in the past. This is a very, very deep baseball team, and that's what you need for 162 games. And I think they tackled prepping for 162 probably better than any other team in the big leagues. The lineup is very deep. The rotation has probably 10 to 12 guys I'm okay with starting a baseball game. And that's not something you say really ever about a baseball team. The bullpen is very deep as well, too. I give it an A. I think the only thing takes it off from an A+ is not signing Tucker, one, and giving Bo Bichette like $40+ million a year. I don't think he's worth that. Obviously, it's what they had to pay. Felt a little bit of desperation there, but I was okay letting go Alonso. Nimmo as well too, I'm okay with. So an A for me is a good grade. A team that's not getting an A is the Washington Nationals, and that is the next team that we are doing.
Yeah, it's not an A, but I didn't fail them either. I gave Washington a B-. The Nationals sucked last year, and they needed young talent. So they're bringing in two former first-round picks, Harry Ford, Gavin Feen. Miles Mikolas is going to be their Chad innings eater, and they're not going to be good. But hey, they've gotten started on looking towards the future here. They didn't have any major fuck-ups with their big trades, which is a big deal when it comes to the MLB offseason. So that's why they're getting the passing grade for me here.
Yeah, I think I just expected more from the Nationals at this point. This is a team I was pretty excited about 2-3 years ago. And that big league talent has kind of panned out with guys like James Wood and CJ Abrams. And they still suck. Like, they're still really bad because they have not added anything in terms of big league talent. They lose Josh Bell in free agency. They trade Jose Ferrer and Mackenzie Gore. No real additions to the lineup as of right now. I know Harry Ford will probably be there at some point this year. The rotation it's really bad. Miles Mikolas and Foster Griffin are their two ads. Right now, Mikolas is slated to be their opening day starter on Fangraphs. Bullpen adds a bunch of fringe guys, but it's just not. It's not a. They don't have a closer. They don't have a setup man. They don't have a seventh inning guy. They don't have a sixth inning guy in this bullpen, in my eyes, and that is scary when you're in this division. Like this is the worst offseason in the big leagues for me. Like by a long distance, I think it's a very unprepared big league roster. The win total right now, I think it's at like 70 something games. I
No
would
way.
not be shocked if this team loses like 105, 110 games this season, especially if Dylan Cruz is what Dylan Cruz was last year. And I don't want him to be, but there's no denying that that's a possibility. So it's an F, an easy F for the Washington Nationals for me. And the Philadelphia Phillies.
So Philly ended up getting the worst grade from me, the C minus, just because there's way more on the line, pretty much is what it came down to. Schwarber gets a huge extension, and Real Muto is coming back to finish his career in Philly, which may not have been the right decision. We'll see. Adolis Garcia is going to replace Castellanos, and they have a ton of firepower, of course, but this is feeling like a Rangers season written all over it. It's a really old team, injured pitching staff, potentially asking way too much from Aiden Miller and Justin Crawford to start the season. We'll see how they look in spring training, but Philly may be in some trouble if they have guys that should be in, high A or double A starting on the major league team.
Yeah. They lose Suarez and Bader. Those are big losers. Lineup adds Adolis Garcia. I think he'll be good for them. I think he'll be better than Castellanos, but I still think this lineup is very much built on like nostalgia, and that's not a good thing to do, considering that team didn't win a World Series. No adds to the rotation, which I'm not completely upset about. Right now, Painter's slated to be in the rotation as per Fangraphs. I don't know if he's even going to be able to take on a rotation role right now. Who knows? But Zach Wheeler is out for probably May, June-ish, I'd say. The bullpen adds Brad Keller. I think their bullpen's in a very good spot, and I think that bullpen's ready to take on a ton of work. Duran, Alvarado, Keller, Kerkering. I think it's a 3 or 4 closer type back end of the bullpen. No big moves, which I kind of wish they did. So it's not going to be a great grade. I'll give it a C plus because I don't think they inherently made any bad moves. I like all the things that they brought in, but there was no real move the needle type of deal for me, which would have gotten them into the B or an A territory. The Milwaukee Brewers, as we go to the Central.
All right. Much better offseason for Milwaukee. B plus for me. Another team who made at least 5 big trades. I didn't count it because there's probably way more in the minor league guys too. But the plan became more clear as each trade was announced throughout the offseason because I think most people were a little confused with what they were doing. Freddie Peralta, the ace, is gone. But Milwaukee gets probably the second and third most exciting prospects that the Mets had, and Jet Williams, Brandon Sprout. Brandon Woodruff comes back for one more year, helps Milwaukee fill in those innings. Kyle Harrison, very interesting lefty who we've been following for a long time. He feels like at minimum another Aaron Ashby, minimum. And interesting platoon options, David Hamilton, Rengifo. I know Brett is a little worried about these guys last time I talked to him lineup-wise, but hey, they had Angel Zerpa too from Kansas City, throws cheese. This is definitely a Milwaukee offseason if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, very Milwaukee offseason. They lose Jansen, Quintana, Shelby Miller. They trade Peralta, Durbin, and Collins. They add Rengifo to the lineup. Maybe Jet wins the third base job, though, to start the season. I don't know. The rotation only sees subtractions, but that's okay because I really like Logan Henderson, who's going to get a chance, it looks like, and Chad Patrick, who is actually a former A. Can't believe we traded him. But regardless, I think the rotation is still going to be solid. They add Zerpa to the bullpen, which makes if you are a lefty in the NL Central and you're facing Jared Koenig, Aaron Ashby, Angel Zerpa, and DL Hall, you're leaving with a bruise on your shin because you're fouling off your leg, and you're leaving with the bat on your shoulder because you're getting K'd, it's going to suck for a lot of lefties in that division, that's for sure. I didn't see a ton of meaningful additions, but I think Milwaukee's stance is very clear, as it's pretty much always been. A lot of homegrown talent, a lot of guys that they are going to believe in from the minors. Jesus Mate probably comes up at some point of the year. Maybe Luis Pena. Jet Williams will for sure be up. So I understand the being patient, and I still think this is a pretty damn good team. I give it a B minus. Not a huge offseason as far as additions, but I'm okay with that. The St. Louis Cardinals.
I actually gave St. Louis a B plus because they finally hit the reset button. I've been asking for this for like 4 years now with St. Louis. Arenado, Gray, Contreras, Donovan, they're all gone. It's time to get younger, especially in the rotation. So good for them grabbing all those Boston pitchers, May, Dobbins, Fitz. They also get Sintej, who is, even if he's a reliever, it's going to be a very, very dramatic rookie season once he does get the call because there's nothing like it. So I gave him a B plus, even though they're going to suck. Similar to Washington, they could have done more, but I don't know, man. I just didn't expect much from them either.
Yeah, definitely a signal of a rebuild. They trade Donovan and Arenado. I think they definitely lost the Donovan trade. I don't like Sintej as a return for Donovan. I think, especially from the Mariners, there's guys to be got from them.
Yeah.
The lineup sees no ads. Another year of Jordan Walker, it looks like, who's getting his 5th chance in the big leagues. The rotation adds Dustin May. My eyebrows are up right now. The bullpen adds Ryan Stanek, among some others. It just felt like a very big signal of this team is going to suck this year. And the rotation quite possibly might be the worst in the big leagues. Liberators are number 1, but Palante, who sucks, Michael McGreevy, who's a 4 or 5 at best, and Kyle Leahy, who was a reliever last year, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep. I just don't see it with this rotation. I know this is a team that's not going to win the Central, but this could be another team that, maybe wins 65 games, and I did not think it was going to be that type of rebuild for the Cardinals. And it never really has been with the Cardinals. This is a city that loves baseball, and this is a front office that moved this year that signaled, I hate baseball. So I give it an F. I do not like it. I just don't.
I get it's Heim Bloom definitely leaves his mark. I could definitely see this being an F looking back in 3 years, sure, but I guess I'm just happy they got young. They were so old.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
we'll see how Sintej is, but I think they could have gotten Emerson or Montez or whoever. On to the Cubs.
Cubbies get an A from me. Kyle Tucker is gone, not surprisingly, but they quickly replaced that spot in the lineup with one of the most consistent dudes in all of baseball, Alex Bregman. After winning a playoff series last year, looks like the Cubbies are once again going all in. They trade prospects for Edwin Cabrera. They're trying to stay ahead of those pitching injuries, and ton of solid relievers signed with the Cubbies this year too. I'm sure you got the stats for me here.
Yeah, a lot of small losses. I'll say that. They lose Tucker, who's big one. Brad Keller's big one. Drew Pomeranz, Willie Castro, and Taylor Rogers. They replace Kyle Tucker in a way with Alex Bregman, which is a pretty solid trade-off, I'd say. It's a net loss, but I think it's still good. Okay. They add Edward Cabrera in the Owen Cassidy deal. Which makes the rotation a very deep 1 through 5. I think you're okay with all 5 of those guys probably starting a playoff game for you. And I don't think there's a ton of rotations in the big league like that. The bullpen, I love it. Phil Maton, Hunter Harvey, Jacob Webb, Homie Milner. They get all the guys from Texas, literally all of them. And that bullpen in Texas last year was really good. This bullpen makeover is probably my favorite position overhaul in the sport this offseason. I really like it. I think they're going to be really good. I think Chicago's bullpen was one of the biggest up-down type of things of their team this past year. They hit the ball consistently. But this bullpen makes them probably a 90 win plus team, I'd say. So they give it an A for me. I really like this offseason. Hopefully Justin Steele comes back at some point in the year. I don't really know. They also had Shelby Miller, who's out for the season, but regardless, he's there as well too in the dugout, in that very small Wrigley dugout. But it's an A for me. I really like it. The Pittsburgh Pirates.
I gave Pittsburgh a B plus because they got some actual major league bats this offseason. So I guess I'm most optimistic for Ryan O'Hearn stepping into a starting role. We'll see how long that lasts if he does end up being a platoon anyways. But they also get Mason Montgomery. He goes from the Tampa pitching lab to the Pittsburgh one. And at the end of the day, man, hey, they're at least trying now. I went on my biggest Pittsburgh rant, I think, ever on the podcast was last year's trade deadline, where I'm just like, you guys are just giving up, and this is so sad. But they have major league talent coming into the building for once. So there you go, Pittsburgh.
Their loss was Mike Burrows. Their ads, Brandon Lau, Ryan O'Hearn, Marcelo Zuna. They had the password of Justinson, Garcia, and Jake Mangum as a guy who could play the outfield as well too. The rotation ad was Jose Urquidy, or the replacement, I guess, for Mike Burrows was Urquidy. They add Gregory Soto and Mason Montgomery to the pen, a couple of tough lefty pitchers to go against. I think it's a good boost to the lineup for what was a probably bottom 3 lineup last year. I still don't think it's a top 15 to 20 right now, but they get out of the bottom dwellers. And if Connor Griffin comes up and he has a really good rookie season, like a lot of people are expecting, I mean, Fangraphs graded him 70. They haven't given out a 70 grade in like forever, I don't think. So if he comes up and plays really good, maybe this turns into an average lineup. I wish they added like one more like Nick Martinez, Aaron Savalier type starting pitcher, because they rely so much right now on young arms and guys coming off of injury. Braxton Ashcraft, Bubba Chandler, and Jared Jones. And I just wish that there was a guy to take off some of those innings from those guys, and put a little bit less pressure on them. But if this goes as planned for Ashcraft, Chandler, and Jared Jones, and I mean, I haven't even mentioned Paul Skeens yet, yeah, the rotation is going to be fun to watch. Supplemental adds to the pen, I think, are good as well, too. It's a good offseason. I give it a B. I think they're definitely preparing for the Connor Griffin era in Pittsburgh. The Cincinnati Reds are next.
Cincinnati ends up being at the bottom for me, but it's a very similar offseason to the Pirates, I guess. I gave them a B minus. I don't know how much they were expecting to do with the pitching other than waiting around for the rotation to develop, because they have a lot of young guys. But hey, they got a lot of the crap out of their lineup, right? The guys who were negative. Suarez is coming back. He's probably going to hit 30 homers if he's healthy. So just trying to be league average lineup, like a lot of these Central teams, is enough for a B minus for me.
They lose Nick Martinez, Austin Hayes, Miguel Andujar, and then they also trade Gavin Lux. Their ads in the lineup, Eugenio Suarez, which will be fun, and JJ Bleday, who we love. I don't know if he's great, but we love him. No ads of the rotation, which I am okay with because it's a deep rotation. The pen adds Brock Burke, among some other guys. And I think there's already a pretty good bullpen as well, too, so I'm okay with that. They added well, and I know there was a time where Cincinnati fans are really upset because their owner or somebody said that they were only going to add Kyle Schwarber because of the tickets he sells or something like that, not because of the ball games that he wins, which was a crazy statement. But I think this front office ended up being okay. They're going to rely on their pitching once again, which I think is completely okay. So I give it a B plus, slightly better than the Pirates in my eyes, just because I think they handled the rotation a little bit better, or maybe they're just better prepared already and what they have going on there. But the NL Central is going to be a fun pitching division, and usually it's a division of mediocrity throughout. But I'm watching Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati every single game this year because it's going to be a fun pitching matchup, no matter what you get, unless it's Jose Urquidy versus, I don't know, somebody who's on the big league roster yet for the Reds. But a B plus for me. On to the last division, the Arizona Diamondbacks to start it off.
All right, Arizona's going to get a C for me. Zach Gallen helps my grade a lot here, bring it up to average. I understand that this kind of team is going to have their highs and their lows, and they're going to live and die by the long ball. But I compare this kind of offseason to Baltimore, and it's just not as good. Soroka's going to get a chance to prove himself. Great dude. I just want him to stay healthy. That Achilles injury was one of the freakiest things I've ever seen. Paul Sewald is back in the bullpen. I don't love the Arenado fit, but I guess if Jordan Lawler isn't going to play, then someone's got to play third base.
Yeah, they lose Blaze Alexander, who they traded. They also got rid of Jake McCarthy, who's a fun fantasy player every now and then. They add Nolan Arenado and Carlos Santana, so a couple of 35-plus-year-olds there. They add Merrill Kelly back, who they traded to Texas in the deadline. They add Michael Soroka. They re-add Paul Sewald from Detroit. How many people knew he was even a Tiger last year? Not many. They get Cade Stroud back in the Blaze Alexander deal, which I like. But this year for the Diamondbacks feels very like, let's just push it on to 2027. Like, there was no real winning move here. I think they understand that Corbin Burns probably isn't going to pitch this season. And they really don't have a chance to win the World Series if Corbin Burns is not going to be pitching for them. So they kind of punt on this year. I know they had Arenado, which kind of signals the exact opposite of, hey, let's try to win now. But I think it's more of a patchwork deal than it is to, go win something in three years from now. I give it a B- because I don't think there's – I like Carlos Santana and I like Cade Stroud. And I think getting Soroka and Merrill Kelly are good moves, but there wasn't anything crazy that moves the needle for me. So a B-. Los Angeles Dodgers, a very simple offseason.
Very simple, and yet again ending up with the best grade for me, A+. They did it again, man. Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz come to LA. One of the only notables leaving right now is Michael Kopech, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still ends up coming back, be it free agency or a trade in July too. So I have no complaints, man. They're locked and loaded. And not to mention some of the outfield prospects in AA who, I mean, holy cow, dude. You got teenagers with like an 800 OPS down there. They're never going to stop, are they?
Never. They lose Kirby Yates. Kopech, like you mentioned, as well, too. They had Kyle Tucker to their lineup. No starting pitchers, but who gives a fuck because they have so many different guys. They add Edwin Diaz, not Alexis Diaz. So they've now had both the Diaz brothers on their team. It's a very simple offseason where you take the very top 1% free agents and add them to your team, and that's all you need to do because you have such a good foundation on your roster. You're really good at developing players. You're really good at making trades. You're really good at signing the biggest players from America or from other countries as well too. This very simple A+ for me. Like I don't see how it could be anything else because they didn't have any holes. And yet they filled them anyways. So maybe they're just wasting concrete at this point, but money grows on trees in LA. That's all there is. The Giants.
The Giants are interesting, and I can't wait to read what I have written for you, Kyle. C+, because the Giants definitely addressed their biggest needs. But to the Giants fans that I talk to every week that think this is the team that's going to go challenge the Dodgers, boy, do I have some news for you. Harrison Bader is a nice change of pace out in center, but there is no way he hits well in that ballpark. They got Luis Arias on a great deal. But the second he doesn't run out that ground ball, the fans are going to be turning on him and begging for Joe Panic to come back. At least Adrian Hauser and Molly are moving into a pitcher's park. You would expect they could throw some innings for them, but this is not the team.
Yeah. They lose Justin Verlander, which is whatever. The rotation, or not the rotation, the lineup, Luis Arias and Harrison Bader, who you talked about. They add Molly and Hauser, who you talked about as well too, in the rotation, and the bullpen adds Sam Hentages and Jason Foley, who might pitch this year. I don't really know. I think they filled the gaps in the lineup with above replacement level bats and a couple of back end rotation guys to fill the rotation. But there just is nothing here that you're like, wow, like that's going to be a move that really puts you over top and gets you past 81 games this year. Like, I mean, maybe they win 83, 84, 85, but they're still in a tough division. There's no way that they compete with the Dodgers, which is not really saying much. I don't think a ton of people are, but they also just did not add to the bullpen. And the bullpen now is missing Randy
It
Rodriguez for
sucks.
the entire season with Tommy John late in September. Uh, Ryan Walker's good, Eric Miller's good, and Joel Peguero had a really good end of the season last year. But outside of that, and the guys I said are maybe ifs as well too. Like it's rough, and I know they're probably going to be fine because they're pitching in AT&T, and it's going to be easy to pitch there. But a C at best. It's a lot of average on this team, and I think you can even go C minus or D plus with not adding that much in the rotation or in the bullpen. Two more teams. The San Diego Padres is where we go next.
Yeah, well, speaking of patchwork, man, these guys really saved themselves. So I think they were headed towards a really poor grade, but with the guys I'm going to talk about in a second, I think they get right at that 15 spot, right in the middle, C plus grade. I guess they weren't really allowed to spend big money with the team being up for sale. That's a conversation for another day. But hey, they brought back Michael King. That's going to be big because they're probably going to miss Dylan Cease. And it's just going to be one of those off seasons where they're throwing a bunch of darts at a dartboard. Walker Bueller, Herman Marquez, Tristan McKenzie, Castellanos, Miggy Andahar, all these 1 year deals. I will say the new Korea signing, Sung Mun Song, looks like if he could hit a little bit, that would be their best move of the offseason for sure. But right now, I got him right in the middle. C plus.
They lose a bit. They lose Cease, O'Hearn, Robert Suarez, Luis Arias. They add Andujar Castellanos and Sungmin Song. They add Herman Marquez. No adds to the bullpen, which I'll start there. Okay with. Like the bullpen is amazing. You don't really need to do anything there. The rotation was very scary in the back end last year, and the lineup was pretty scary once you got past like 5 or 6 last year. They did not score a lot of runs. The rotation was not that good, and throwing the darts at the dartboard, like you said, is a good way to go about it. If you're a 70-win team trying to find a guy that can eat innings for you, or turn into a prospect or two at the deadline. It's not good if you are trying to compete for a playoff roster or a playoff spot, and they just do not. They just didn't make a move right. The single whole offseason, and I'm like, yeah, that's going to help them when it comes to playoff time. And they needed that because they were not a team that I think could have won the World Series last year. They had meaningful losses, and they did not add well enough. And whether they had to or not, it's an F for me. I really do not like this offseason. I think they downgraded as a baseball team quite a bit. So on to our favorite, the Rockies.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give the Rockies the same grade as all the other teams we've been talking about, C plus, because it wasn't any worse than we're used to seeing from them. Michael Lorenzen's always really fun to watch pitch. Quintana and Sagano come over on short deals, guys that could get flipped at the deadline if they are actually able to pitch in Denver. Looks like Willie Castro is going to be the new vet in the lineup, surrounded by a bunch of castoffs. Man, Jake McCarthy could be something. Edward Julian could be something. At the end of the day, they're probably just going to be league average.
Only loss is Marquez, which isn't really much in my eyes. They add Willie Castro, who's a legitimate big leaguer. Jake McCarthy and Eddie Julian, I'll watch them. Like those guys were fun at some point. Maybe they turn into something again. They add Lorenzen, Quintana, Sagano, who you mentioned. Like at least these are guys that can pitch 150 innings. They might post 5.5 ERAs in Colorado, but at least they're going to be playing baseball. They added a couple smaller pen arms. I don't know. Like they got better as a team. I'll say that. And made some solid buy low moves that could turn into a deal at the deadline. Quintana, Lorenzen, or Sagana, one of them will be traded for sure by the deadline. Like that's something you can guarantee. But they're not going to win more than like 55. Like I don't know how they do that in that division. So I'll give it a B, but that grade doesn't really mean anything. If it's an A plus or an F, they're still losing 115 games this year. There really is no way around that. So there's that. NBA trade deadline winners and losers. Let's do it.
All right.
I'll start off with your winners. Give me your three, and then I'll give you my three after that.
Okay.
And you can. We're good with time. Just keep on going.
All
If we
right,
need to
bet.
go for another, it's fine.
So I misread. I did five. So I'll mention my honorable mentions then.
Okay.
I think Nikola Vucevic is a big winner for going to Boston. They had a huge hole at center, and he already has played really well. He had 19 and 11 last week. And then the other winner, I'm going to say honorable mentionly, Houston, or Jesus Christ, Dallas Mavericks, same state, different team. They got out of the Davis contract. You know, people are going to clown on the Luka trade forever because it was the wrong decision. But hey, at least they got out of the Davis trade. So let's start this off with the top three. Utah Jazz. Danny Ainge always has a plan, and there's finally some optimism for Utah. Triple J and Walker Kessler is a pretty fearsome front court. Other cap dumps this month, too, have cleared out space for Isaiah Collier and Ace Bailey to take way more shots. They just need to have a good lottery poll, and they're going to start spending some money next year, and it's going to be fun. Want me to keep going?
Yeah, go ahead. Go all through them.
All right, my number two winner is going to be James Harden. He's clearly got something left in the tank, and maybe the perfect veteran piece to help out Donnie Mitchell in Cleveland. Garland was never healthy when they needed him. The window is closing here in Cleveland, and the Clippers have been playing well, but they have a much foggier future than Cleveland for sure. And my number one winner of the trade deadline is going to be the OKC Thunder. Of course it is, right? Jared McCain is going to get plenty of shots up while SGA is out. And OKC is one of the only teams that could actually afford to do something like this because they got seven guys just like AJ Mitchell, despite his great season. And all their future first round picks allows them to pick and choose and give them Houston's pick for this deal instead of a good one. So they get to keep Utah's picks just in case.
Yeah, my three winners. I'll start off with OKC and Jared McCain. I think that's a good one. I think it's a win for Jared McCain because he goes from the drama capital of Philadelphia to a team that just wants to win games in OKC. And OKC gets a guy who was really good in his rookie year, having a tough season this year, doesn't really need to do anything crazy, just needs to develop in OKC, and I think they're going to give him time to do that. My second winner is Wizard fans. They've had such a boring team for ever since Bradley Beal left. And when he was scoring 30 points a game, now they have a duo where they can kind of be excited about and maybe even buy a jersey for Anthony Davis and Trae Young. I'll get into a loser that comes with that as well, too, once we get to the losers. But my big winner and a team that I like for the future is going to be Atlanta. And I think they did a really good job preparing for having probably a top three pick this offseason with having the Pelicans pick this year. They had CJ McCollum like a month ago. They had Corey Kispert, Duop Reese, Jock Landale, Gabe Vincent, Jonathan Kuminga, and Buddy Hield. They had 3 seconds in 2027, 2030, and 2032. I think it's a good haul that prepares them for the future. Seems very much that they're going to build around Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Dyson Daniels, and I think they're in a good spot for that. And, I think with how this draft could be, and if they get a boozer or find a way to get one and get Peterson, like Atlanta's going to turn into a team that I think is reckoned with in the East, and I think they set themselves up nicely with how this draft is going to be. With the winners come the losers. The three losers, or I guess five that you have, three for me. What are your losers of the deadline?
We'll start off with New Orleans. The Pelicans are another team with some really bad contracts. And the guy they actually did trade, Alvarado, is one of the biggest winners of this whole thing, too. He gets to New York and just absolutely dominates in his short time there. So at the end of the day, just trade Zion, man. You got to do it. Him and Jordan Poole and whoever else is making $100 million because his team sucks. The other honorable mention I had was the Clippers. I can understand Harden and Garland swapping. It helps both timelines, but Zubats is awesome. You don't get them like that every day. And the pick that they got from Indiana has some really weird protections, too. It's top 4, which makes sense. But now, if it ends up in between 10 and 30, they lose it anyways. and it goes back to Indiana. So Kawhi's having an awesome season, but the noise from the Clippers sounds like they're about to blow it up for the 20th time in the last 25 years. So let's get into the big dogs here. Start off with Memphis Grizzlies. To their credit, they did get a future first round pick for Jaren Jackson, but this team sucks. Turns out nobody wants Ja Morant, big shocker. And the depth gets a lot younger with this trade, too. Walter Clayton, Taylor Hendricks, but this isn't baseball. You know, you're not just going to flip it around getting slightly younger. So I don't get it what Memphis is doing at all. I do like Cedric Coward, though, who we just talked about. Number two loser, really big one. It was close for the top spot. We'll get to that in a second. Sacramento Kings at number two. Nobody took the bait. DeRozan, Sabonis, Levine, Malik Monk, they all stay put in Sacramento purgatory on those ridiculous contracts. So those guys are going to be bad for a while too. The number one spot, though, doesn't get much worse than Chris Paul last weekend. CP3 gets moved to Toronto in a massive cap dump. Unfortunately for him, there was never a roster spot for him in Toronto. So that means his career's over. And just a really weird way to go out in an era of all these retirement tours. But you know what, man? I'll always remember the vetoed Lakers trade. I'll remember the Lob City Clips, the Phoenix comeback, the finals appearance, and of course his really weird year in the Bay Area.
My three losers. I guess you can consider New Orleans here, but I don't think it was because of any moves. They just don't have their pick, and that sucks for a team that is really bad. So there's maybe why not go try to do something stupid for a year, even though they got no chance to do anything. But screw the Hawks out of like a top 3 pick or whatever. I'm not going to fault the Kings because they have their pick, and if they get the number 1 pick, they change their franchise, and I think it could be that easy with how this draft class looks. So my 3 losers, I'll start off with the Nuggets. They didn't do anything. And I think the Nuggets team is clearly not a top 2 or maybe even 3 team in the West right now. And I wish they just did something, because I think this Jokic Murray era is closing quicker than people expect. Aaron Gordon's getting older as well too. And I think if they, did something to go add a wing or a guard that can play some defense, somebody on their team can maybe play defense, then maybe you have a chance to steal a couple games from OKC and you get yourself in a spot that you can win another ring. And I just think this team right now, it feels like the all-star game. Like there is no way to really make it better with what they're doing. So
it's like they think Peyton Watson is like Scottie Pippen or something.
Yeah, and he's a free agent this offseason, I think, as well too. So I think he's probably going somewhere. The other 2 losers I have, I'll start off with Anthony Davis. He goes to Washington. A lot of contract stuff, but I think him and Trae Young are destined to be terrible still. And I think he's going to be in a spot where in another year or 2, he's going to have to want out. He's going to have this whole, connotation to him that anywhere that he goes, except for the Lakers when he was with LeBron, turns into shit. And he's going to be going to another team probably, and just has all that baggage to carry with him now. And I don't think Anthony Davis is like that. I don't think he's a guy that should be playing basketball in Washington. This is a guy that's a winning player, one of the best players in the league when he's healthy. He's got given too much money, I think, in the grand scheme of things, and that kind of ended up ruining his career as a basketball player. And then my biggest loser is a guy who has to say that he thinks he likes Milwaukee for another year, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo, because he wants to get out of there. It seems very obvious, and he's stuck there until the offseason at least. And it seemed now for 5 straight years, hey, Milwaukee's going to trade Giannis. Hey, he's going to go to the Warriors. Hey, he's going to go to the Lakers. He's going to do all this stuff. And it just has not happened. And I think he is restless and tired of going through this. And for Giannis, much like AD, I think we're getting to the point now where he's wasting his career in Milwaukee, because they are 23-30. And I know he's been hurt, and I know that kind of contributes to it. But they've low-key honestly been better without him in the grand scheme of things, which is weird. But, I think Giannis is a loser here. And I know he, says that he loves Milwaukee, and I'm sure he really loves it, but he doesn't like it there anymore, and it's time for him to get out. So Giannis is a loser for me. I wish he got out to a spot that he likes to play basketball, because Giannis, when he is going and when he's playing like himself, he's one of the most intriguing and most dominant players in the sport.
I avoided Giannis just because I think he's only a couple months away. Maybe they just wanted to get some more picks, so they waited. But yeah, there's no way he's happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, that does it for winners and losers of the deadline. About a week out from that now at this point, so a little bit more removed. Even though there's only been like 2 basketball games since last Tuesday. Second half, spring training starts Friday. You got anything here, or is this
no? Just some reminders. We didn't have time to talk about everything today, so yeah, spring training starts on Friday. A's play, I want to say Chicago, then the Giants.
Giants are the third game, I think.
Oh, okay.
The White Sox, and then like the Angels, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. Who knows? I know in about a second. Yeah, the Guardians are the second game.
Okay.
And then the Giants.
Yeah, that's all.
But yeah, the White Sox game is watchable. For A's Rangers is cool. I don't know if there's StatCast. I like seeing StatCast. Just so I can kind of actually really know what's going on. But I don't know if that's available for that game. But I'll be watching on Saturday against the White Sox. I'll be watching on, I think it's Tuesday against Milwaukee next week. The game's on Netflix or something. I don't know. That's what it says on MLB.com. I just don't know how that's going to work. But maybe we're on Netflix.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, spring training does start Friday. Always a good time. Good to see your favorite player hit a homer or a strikeout against a guy who's in single A, because it's all going to happen. Yeah, Jeffrey Young's going to tear his ACL trying to do the splits again. But NFL Combine's coming up as well too. You got something on here? I know we'll talk again before the Combine starts, but you got anything for that?
Yeah, we will have some time, just like a placeholder, Thursday, the 26th, we will have an episode. But I saw there's over 300 players invited. That seems way higher than normal. There are like 17 quarterbacks, and 4 of them our friends would know. So we're going to see a lot of guys from like Montana Southern running. And it's going to be awesome because right now you can't listen to the smoke right now. I haven't done any mock drafts in a month. We just got to wait till the combine because the stuff you hear right now, no one's talking to players. It's all BS. So I'm excited for that though. We got about a week and a half.
Yeah, I guess NFL stuff too. I mean, we'll hit on it in a second once we get to our bets. But Raiders filling out their staff.
Congrats,
Rob Leonard, DC. I'm okay with. Raiders run defense was pretty good last year. Andrew Janoko, Seahawks QB coach, heard good things about him. Coming on to be the OC, obviously fired up with Kubiak as well too. That's very cool. To make official, seems like he's very much bought in pretty quickly. It's funny to see like the Raiders press conference because it's like you got Charles Woods or like after the show of the press conference, they had like this set up in their training facility where it's like Charles Woodson and James Jones, the wide receiver. Used to be a Raider and the Packer. Like they're all like dapping up and like having a good time and like laughing and smiling. Baron Davis is there because he's a Raider analyst now as well too, which is funny. And then Kubiak comes on the show. He's like very no nonsense, like locked in, like, hey, Baron because Baron Davis is throwing like a tiny football with Kubiak's kids, and they're like, oh, that's not the guy you want to have with your kids. He's like, oh, really? I did not know that.
Why?
But it's funny. It seems like a no nonsense guy, which is good to see have in the building. And Kubiak I'm fired up for. So
there you go.
Let's get into layup bowl predictions. It was a good Super Bowl for me and my bets. My layup was Cooper Kupp, 4+ catches. Kind of helped with JSN getting hurt. Cooper Kupp ends up with 6, I think. Plus 120 was what I had for the 4+ catches, so that goes green. Skyler had over 45.5. It actually got close towards the end, which we did not expect, but that Seattle defense was just so daunting throughout. And they even helped contribute to the score in the grand scheme of things. This week, the Houston Rockets -2.5 versus the Charlotte Hornets on Thursday. Charlotte's been hot. I can't deny that. They've been really good for the past month or so. But they're coming off of, just as everybody is, a week break. And I think when you're a young team that's, so glued, if you have that time away, it can get unglued very quickly. Also, Musa Diabate and Miles Bridges are still suspended for this game. Houston's like the tallest team in the NBA. That scares me. So without your best rebounder and without your best scoring forward, I think it's going to be tough in that one. So Houston -2.5.
I got a very similar strategy with mine. I'm glad we're on the same page here. It's Knicks Detroit, though. The two best teams in the East. I have the Knicks covering 4.5 because of a lot of the things you just said, right? Detroit has been super locked in, but they haven't played in over a week. Also, another suspension, it's Jalen Duren. That's their second best player. So you would imagine Cat and Mitchell Robinson would have their way, if you will, with Detroit.
Yeah, bold prediction 2 weeks ago. I had Seattle -9.5.
Good call.
That goes green. It was about plus 190. I mean, I'm happy with that bet. That was really good. I did not expect me to be hitting my larger bets like that. Taylor had Rashid Shaheed anytime touchdown plus 360. They didn't really need to do much with Rashid in that game, so that one goes red. This week, this is a bold one. I'm going golf for the first time ever, I think, on the podcast. We're about a month and a half into the season now at this point. Jake Knapp has had a tied 11th. He's at a 5th place. He's had an 8th place finish. He's had a tied 8th as well, too. Playing at the Genesis Invitational, which is in the Palisades in LA. So it's a course that you have to be really good approach irons as well. And Jake Knapp has been one of the best approach iron guys in the PGA this year. So the odds were about plus 3,500 to plus 4,500, which is crazy odds. You put down a couple of dollars and you win $100 if you win. So why not let it fly? Jake Knapp.
All right, man. Yeah, I do. I feel like this time of year, there's like 3 different categories of sports watchers once the NFL is done. Saturday, Sunday morning, it's either golf, hockey, or college basketball. So that's going to be my pick here. I've been watching a ton of college basketball. Specifically, the Big 12 has been ridiculous. So I'm going to go 23 BYU, winning at home against number 6 Iowa State. Number 6 Iowa State won last night against number 2 Houston. Epic game. They won by 2, had to come back, but they shot like 2 for 15 from 3. BYU's got AJ DeBonsa, a couple other shooters, very high up in the NIL stuff. So at home, usually college basketball, that's a pretty big advantage. So it's going to be around plus 200. I don't know what it is because BYU just choked against Kansas, but it's such a tough conference. They're just going to keep beating the crap out of each other. I got BYU on Saturday morning.
Yeah, this is definitely the deep cut type of, or the month and a half of deep cut until we get to the MLB season. You just have baseball on every single day. But there's a lot of different routes you could go. Right now, golf and college baseball is it for me. College basketball occasionally makes its way on. The Olympics from 8 to 11, what I've been watching as well too. But I'm not going to bet on a figure skater because I've never heard of any of them. At least these golfers I've been watching for the past month, so that helps. But yeah, that's going to do it for episode 281. We have some ramble time here, which is actually good. We're not trying to get through our Zoom restrictions. But next week, 282. Oh man, maybe some spring training bold predictions through the first couple of games in spring training. Maybe we see a guy hit 3 homers or something like that, and we're like, "Yep, MVP." NBA will be back, which is cool.
Yep.
Combine will be closer than what it was. Maybe we get into some sort of free agency prediction or something like that in the NFL. Maybe some positional grades or something in the MLB. Who knows? That'll be decided next Monday, but the episode will be on Tuesday, of course. Until then, what do you got? I don't know.
It's good to be back. Good to ramble. Like you said, it's been too long.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of waiting a week, right? We come in and we got so much to talk about.
Maybe get your love for the game back.
Mhm. Of course.
Yeah. All righty. We'll see you guys next week. I ain't got nothing.
Let's go to, well, actually, we never talked about Kristaps.
Oh,
That's a
yeah.
good one to end on.
KP, man. Welcome in. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
7-footer that can shoot.
Yeah,
And his name's not
exactly.
Al Horford.
You know, I'm a big Kristaps guy, but at the end of the day, they got a plus value for Kuminga, who was not going to play. He didn't have a spot on this team, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
All right. We got
See you next
282
week.
next week.
Yeah.
282. We'll see you next week, Kyle.
Peace.